where could Kubo possibly take the Bleach franchise next, and what was he going to do after the series ended? I think those were two of the biggest questions on everybody's mind when Bleach came to an end in 2016. I know for a fact that I felt unfulfilled by the way the series ended, and I was expecting some kind of, well, at least I was hoping for some kind of sequel announcement, possibly in the future. But regardless, I was very keen to, well, hopefully see Kubo return to the manga space at some point. Obviously, one of the major reasons Bleach ended the way it did was because he became quite ill. So the possibility of him returning to weekly serialization seemed quite unlikely, but I was hoping for anything. Bleach ended in 2016, and we went a whole about a year, almost 2 years, without anything at all. And then it was announced that he was going to be doing a brand new one-shot called Burn the Witch, and that's what I'm going to look at today. So I'm back again, like I promised I would be. I just want to say thank you before we get started to everyone who watched the last video I did, the one on Bleach Face Again. The hopefully big announcement coming out March 21st, which is literally right around the corner now. But I really appreciate everybody who watched that video, who liked the video, and the few new subscribers we got as well. Honestly, it did a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to do, considering, you know, there hasn't been Bleach on this channel for about 3 years. There hasn't been anything on this channel for ages. So, yeah, I really super appreciate everyone who watched it. And, yeah, if you're new to the channel, do subscribe. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed this review. It's going to be quite in-depth, I think. The one-shot is quite long. It's about 60 pages. But I saw in the comments that people wanted me to talk about it. I know I am obviously kind of late to the party, and I imagine that most of the insight and the takes about this have been covered already, but it would be cool. I'd like to give my opinion on some of it anyway. Because it is quite an interesting piece of work. I'm going to keep looking down here. I've got the chapter essentially right next to me because it is quite long. And it'd be hard to kind of cover everything without me just moving through it. So, yeah, so that's basically the gist of this. I want to talk about Burn the Witch, how it ties into Bleach, and maybe what its future is. But yeah, I think we should just crack on. So yeah, Burn the Witch came out in July 2018. And according to an interview with Kubo in Bleach Jet, it actually takes place 2 years after chapter 686. So obviously 686 is the big time skip that happens right at the end of Bleach. It's the last chapter. So in Burn the Witch, Ichigo isn't, you know, he's 29 or something like that, I think, at this point. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. That kind of makes me wonder if when we next see Bleach, Kubo, if that's Kubo's way of being like, I'm sticking with this time period now, or if we'll move forward even further. Who knows? That's interesting. But at this point, we don't even know that Burn the Witch has anything to do with Bleach. So let's just begin. We have a nice colour page to begin with. We get to see the main characters of this one-shot. It is a one-shot, so we don't get many characters, which I think is smart. But we get our two main leads, both girls, Noel and Spangle, I think the names are. Kubo's names got weirder as the series went on, let's be honest. Most of the Quincy had very weird names. The names here are fine. I've got no real issue with them. Noel is a bit strange, but they make a point of it being a guy's name, and it's a bit weird that she's called that. But you know, whatever. It's not that important. But you know, the colours are nice. They've kind of got like obviously the uniforms are considerably different to that of the Soul Society. But again, that's something we'll get into later. If we move on, we can see, I think the first thing that hit me when I read Burn the Witch was the artwork. Obviously, after a year and a half, it was incredible to see Kubo's artwork again anyway. And naturally, it's most evocative of the Thousand Year Blood War. With the slight flatter look, the less detail, but more dynamic. There's generally more going on in a lot of the panels, which is very similar to how the final arc was drawn. There are obviously standout panels here and there with great detail, but for the most part, the Thousand Year Blood War was drawn in a flatter, less detailed style to accommodate more going on. You know, in stark contrast to, say, the Lost Agent, where the faces were hyper detailed, but that's because there was basically nothing happening in the panels. Anyway, so we get to see Noel to start with. She looks cool. She's got a pretty simple design. You know, if I had to compare it to anyone, she kind of looks like a female, maybe Byakuya, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so it basically starts with her walking to essentially towards how she gets to work. And it starts off with, she basically kind of meets this dog, she goes to give it a dog treat, and then she gets attacked by this guy. Not really attacked, but he like jumps at her in that typical way. And like, I got to be honest with you, when I first read this, like, I was kind of hit with disappointment because it's a very very standard Kubo interaction, and it goes on for ages as well. Ages obviously being an exaggeration, but when I've just started reading this, I'm keen to know more about this world. I'm keen to learn more, and Kubo takes like 3 pages to get through this little interaction between her and the guy's name, which I can't actually remember. It's like Balga or something like that, I think. Who also, by the way, kind of looks a bit like Ichigo. He looks a little bit like adult Ichigo. He kind of looks like. So I'm currently very very slowly creating my own sequel to Bleach, fully illustrated manga, which I can leave the link in the description below. But Balgo kind of looks like my version of an older Kazui, which is kind of weird. But yeah, basically he just jumps at her, he fancies her, and she beats him up. Very, very typical Bleach kind of interaction. Sort of, the guy's basically Keigo. And it's just a bit like, come on. But when we get some cool stuff though, so we get her going into the telephone box. Obviously, being British, it's pretty cool that Kubo chose London for the setting of, the Western branch. Not that we know that yet, but it's very cool that Wingband is set in London. So she puts this special coin into the phone box, and it takes her to Wingband. It's very. I wonder if he was inspired by stuff like Harry Potter, for instance, with that, because it's very Harry Potter, that sort of thing. But yeah, she kind of, so she disappears into the floor. The telephone box takes her into her special location. So we then get to see Spangle, who I think is like an idol. She's like an advertising model. She looks like she's advertising Coca-Cola or something, or like it's supposed to be something like that. Does it say Dragon? I think it says Dragon Drops, which is pretty cool. And obviously that will be relevant later on. But she's standing in front of a massive archway with the top half just completely annihilated. And it says WB, but we don't get to see the rest of it. Obviously that turns out to be a pretty major reveal later on. But anyway, so she's waiting for Noel to arrive. Noel turns up. Both of them work for Wingband, which is basically a group of people that deal with dragons. And if we want to put them in Bleach terminology, they I suppose would be this world's version of hollows. This is where things get really iffy though, because dragons are not hollows. There's a definite distinction there. At least from what we can see in Burn the Witch, they don't seem to be hollows. Dark dragons, which again is something we'll get into later, do act in a very similar way to hollows though. So I wonder if the spirit world is it just different in the different countries, or is it, because obviously Soul Society is apparently split into East and West. Maybe there's North and South. I don't know. But could it be the 4 cardinal points of the compass just have very different spirit worlds? Maybe. That's kind of weird, but I can get behind it. We simply don't have enough information in here to compare it properly to what we know already. But we do get a bit of info about the dragons. Supposedly they're obviously, it's based on our version of a dragon. They're mythical creatures, but what we find out in here is that they're not actually mythical and they're not actually animals. So it's really interesting. So the place they actually hide in is called Reverse London. It's essentially a parallel universe, which I think is really interesting. We don't get to see a lot of it, but we get to see a bit of it. So, like, for instance, I know you can't see what I'm looking at, but here you get, like, the cityscape of London. There's, like, Big Ben and stuff, and Westminster. And then it shows you Reverse London, and it's essentially exactly the same, but there's a massive, massive set of trees that are, like, just way bigger than the buildings, which is really cool, and I'd love to see more of that, that sort of thing. So in Reverse London, which is apparently literally on the underside of London, if you think Soul Society and Vandenreich, that's where all the dragons hang out. It's a parallel universe essentially, and they attack the civilians of normal London. We then get to see essentially their version of Seirete, I suppose, which is kind of neat. It's essentially a tower block, very British, very British. It's essentially a tower block with like a sort of fantastical castle on top of it with like a roof garden. I like it. I think it's kind of neat. It kind of evokes fairy tale to me, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. To be honest, if there's one thing I did like about fairy tale, it was the architecture in the background. So that's not really a bad thing. So yeah, so Reverse London, the Organisation of Natural Dragon Control and Conservation. So basically, this is the Western Seirete. Whether it's bigger than this tower block or not, we never really find out. But I like it. I think it's cool, and it's different enough from Seirete to be, its own thing, which I really like. We now find out this. Now, when I read this for the first time, this was the page pretty much that made me think we might see more from this world at some point. So we get basically introduced to the two main characters, Noel Nihashi and Nini Spangle, both of whom are members of the Pipers division, and Noel is first class, Nini's second class. They're both conservation officers, so they have to deal with dragons essentially. That's basically the gist of it. But the fact that Kubo went to the lengths to say they're part of the Pipers division, again alluding to the Soul Society having their own divisions, made me think when I read it that Kubo has at least plans for more of this world, which I thought was really interesting. So we then get to meet who is my favourite character. He doesn't show up a lot, but yeah, he's a cool looking dude. I think his name's like Billy or something like that. I don't think we can see it here. You know what? I haven't quite got the names down yet. But the dude looks really cool. He's very evocative of some of Kubo's earlier character designs, I would say. He kind of looks like he could be like a zombie powder character or something like that. He's obviously got a bit of a Kyoraku vibe going on with his face and everything. He just looks like a badass. Like, dude, he looks like a casual badass. He's clearly the Urahara kind of character in terms of personality and stuff like that. But yeah, he's just cool, dude. He's really cool, dude. Basically, they have to report to him. They stamp in for work, and then they're off to deal with dragons. And now they have these weird little, I think they're dragons themselves that they fly on. They're kind of like broomsticks. Obviously, they're supposed to be evocative of witches. Their wands are guns in this universe, which is kind of weird, but also kind of cool. And yeah, they ride these weird like broomstick things that are actually like dragons. But the style is cool. It's cool, and it's very early Kubo. It's like Kubo's really letting himself go wild with this a bit, and he's getting a bit weird with it, which I don't mind. That's cool. We then get to see Balgo again. He's hanging out with a friend of his. This is quite important for later on. Balgo's like whining that Noel's not there. And the other dude he's hanging out with is basically like Reverse London's a fairy tale. It's not real. But Balgo's obviously like, actually, yes, it is. Now we get again some more interesting stuff. So the two main characters go to Ninebrook Pastures, where they're like basically, I think they're essentially there to look after the dragons that are there. They're there for a grade A harvest, which is interesting because the dragons themselves in this universe are used for things in the world, so they're like cultivated for their resources, which is really interesting. So here we get more detail about the individual dragons. So dragon is a generic term for fantastic beings that inhabit the inhabitants of London's overworld are unable to manage. So what they're riding is called a broom buggy, which is kind of cool. That's the type of dragon that I think what I like about this is that it really lends itself to personalisation, because obviously Nini and Noel have their own broom buggies, and they look kind of cool. Now, like, this is Kubo's names are great. But this is really fascinating. I think this page is super fascinating because we get to see some of the different types of dragons and what they are used for. So the Woolly Wally is used for textiles, Hammerback is used for minerals, the Conductor is used for electricity, So Meatball and Blue Appetite are used for medicine, I think. Oh no, sorry, Meatball is for food, Blue Appetite is for medicine, and Matchbox is for fuel. But I think what's key about these guys is how weird they look. You know, they look nothing like hollows. They look nothing like dragons either. But Kubo's gone like full on weird with these characters, which I think is really cool. And this is just apparently some of the types of dragon in the universe. So again, making me think that Kubo is going to delve further into this at a later date. But it's just really fun to see the dragons, and they look really cool. And I think here we probably get... So, yeah, I think most people clocked that this was a Bleach spin-off with this next line. Spangle says that I think we handle it pretty well over here because they kill them indiscriminately over in Japan. That is the nail in the coffin. This is actually connected to Bleach line. But it's also kind of a weird one because that is implying that dragons are the Western branch's version of hollows. You know, because she's like, I heard they kill them all indiscriminately over in Japan. That's hollows, what she's referring to. Unless, and this is getting pretty weird now, I don't think this is it, unless there are dragons in Japan as well. But I think she's definitely referring to hollows. Noel then says that she doesn't know because she was born in London. And yeah, so they're basically using the dragons to harvest stuff in these pastures. It's interesting because we get a little bit more, basically a little bit more lore. An ordinary citizen is under no circumstances allowed to touch a dragon. That's why the guy is basically wearing a hazmat suit, which I think is kind of interesting. But the only people who are allowed to do that are those who have passed an exam and who have become affiliated with Wingbind, and those are the witches and the wizards. Which is interesting because I don't think we really see a wizard. I'm not sure if that Billy guy is a wizard or not. And he probably is, actually. Yeah, he probably is. But yeah, so that's quite an interesting little tidbit. And again, it again is kind of like a parallel to Soul Society that you have to pass the Shino Academy, etc. So anyway, things start to get a little bit weird now. I think it does get a little bit weird. So the Balgo is basically hanging out with this dog called Sushi-chan. And the dog is actually a dragon. Stuff does get a bit weird now. And the dragon really reminds me of Fairy Tail. It's Billy Banks Jr., that's his name. Billy Banks Jr., that's a cool name. But yes, it's really kind of weird seeing this sort of thing. Like, I know there were dragons in Bleach, like Hyorin-Maru, I guess. But it's very unusual to see this sort of thing from Kubo. So obviously Noel and Ninny get called to go deal with this dragon. Nice little touch that Noel's ringtone is the Dragon Ball recap music, which I think is quite funny. So basically, instead of the harvest mission, they have to now do an elimination mission. They have to go and take care of a dragon problem in the real world. So yeah, they head off. Again, we get another division name drop. The members of Saber's division. They've been dispatched to the north for practice drills. Doesn't seem incredibly smart to dispatch every member of your best division to the north, but yeah. So yeah, they're sent off to basically go and help this person out. Just a quick thing to talk about Spangle. She kind of looks like a mixture of Riruka and Hiyori. But yeah, I mean, that's just a quick side note. But she does kind of look like that. So yeah, they then take off. She then basically gets her gun. This is kind of weird. So the guns are kind of like traditional guns, but apparently if you turn it and blow into the barrel, it creates like a teleport pathway into the human world, which, sure, why not? So basically the dragon is trying to attack them, I think, essentially. Noel and Spangle then arrive, and it's apparently a dark dragon. So dark dragons, yeah, like I said earlier, they act a bit more like hollows. They feed off of negative emotions. So this dog was a dark dragon the whole time, feeding off of like the dark emotions around everyone. And it's clearly been feeding off of Balgo's emotions because it speaks like him. It's got the same infatuation uh, for Noel. Oh yeah, his name is Virgo, I think. But then the wiki page calls him Balgo. That's kind of weird. I don't actually know I don't know the official translation of his name, to be honest with you. But yeah, so contact with the dragon is punishable by 100 years in prison or death sentence, apparently. That's interesting. Seems a little bit harsh for a human, considering they can't see them most of the time. But yeah, so they basically try and... So it's also quite interesting because he can see Noel, but he can't see the fact that she's flying on a broom buggy, so she just looks like she's sitting in the air, which is interesting. Yeah, so this is all kind of... There's not a huge amount happening right now. They're just kind of freaking out. Basically, they think that Sushi-chan, the dog, is a disguiser dragon. Dragons that take dead bodies and wear them and impersonate them, which is kind of grim when you think about it. So it's kind of weird because they don't... Sushi's dog is the dog is now dead. Like, well, it was always dead, but it's now just like in his hands, and he's just like, oh, he's fine. That's kind of weird. So yeah, they basically try and help Virgo and his mate out, but it turns out that actually there's another disguised dark dragon there, and the friend of Virgo is actually a dragon, and this dragon looks incredibly weird, and this is Kubo going full on body horror, which he had. To be fair, I feel like he was doing that towards the end of Bleach anyway. Like, this doesn't really surprise me that he's doing some super weird stuff, but the dragon kind of bursts out the dude's torso and attacks Spangle as she tries to help them out. Her arm basically gets wrecked. That's a very like Bleach damage panel. Very dynamic, looks really cool. She then goes flying backwards, and this dragon is now like just destroying this dude's body because obviously this guy's been dead for ages because he's a disguiser as well. So yeah, this dark dragon also wants to kill them. Again, he's got a cool design, but it's nothing like anything we ever really see in Bleach, which I'm happy with because it's interesting to get something new. But he just looks really weird. But obviously Virgo can't see him because he's a dragon, so he can just hear his voice. Now apparently this dragon wants to eat a witch to become immortal. Apparently Spangle doesn't think it's true that can actually happen, but at least we kind of get a motive for the villain. And he won't know if it's true or not unless he tries to eat one. So he tries to attack them again, and they have a bit of a fight with him. We get a little bit of backstory about how Virgo's friend shielded Virgo from death, and he died instead. And this dragon's had his body now for like 10 years. So it does open up some questions. So if the guy dies and the dragon takes his body, his body grows though like a normal human. So that's kind of weird. So like it's almost like he is alive, but it's like there's something else inside him, which is kind of fucked up. Yeah, so the dragon then basically they have a big fight, and the evil dragon is like, I don't want to hurt you, Virgo, but Virgo protects Spangle, and in the end, he's like, the thing with this is, it's very reminiscent of this sort of story is very reminiscent again of early Bleach. This is very similar to the kind of monster of the week episodic stuff that we got in the early chapters. This reminds me a lot of, say, like Orihime and her brother. We get like Virgo being like, I don't want to abandon you, dragon, because you've been Selby longer than he was even himself. So like maybe we're actually friends. And then the dragon's like, I'm just going to kill you. Which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird because, yeah, well, literally because of that. Like he says, like, you've been my friend for longer than he was even alive. And the dragon's like, I'm just going to kill you. But he then gets beaten up by Noel. And then Noel's like, "Oh, you were pretty cool just now." It's just so good seeing Kubo's art again. Like, it's like she looks cool. She looks really cool. The dragon then tries to take off, but she uses a special ability. This is very, very Getsuga Tensho. This looks a bit like Jujisho, but it's called Absolute Dragon Shatter. It's basically she basically just shoots the dragon with something, but we don't even really know what it is. Apparently it's some powerful magic thing. And if she can do that, if she can annihilate that dragon in basically one hit, then what are the Sabres division like? The dragon's eyeball then basically falls out of the sky and lands next to Virgo, which is kind of gross. But yeah, so dark dragons must be eliminated. They then return to Wingbind, and they find out that Billy Banks has been promoted to Sabres, or he's been transferred to Sabres anyway. Which is, again, interesting. Like, this is the sort of thing that makes you think they're doing more with this series. Like, why? What's the point in transferring this character that we basically don't know anything about to the better series, to the better team? And for their good work, Noel and Spangle get basically Virgo as like a slave, which is kind of weird. But he's essentially become a were-dragon because he's become in close contact with a dark dragon for 10 years. So he's biologically human, but he's now under their protection as well. So that's kind of he's under their protection, so that's essentially now their job. They have to look after him. You get a good panel of the two of them like freaking out about the fact they now have to look after him, which I think is quite funny. Also, the little dog is still alive. Is he a spirit dog now? I don't know, maybe. Maybe he's a spirit dog. But he can also now talk. Anyway, we get the big reveal of the chapter. Jesus, we're now 26 minutes into this video. I apologise, it's quite long. It's a long chapter though. We then get the big reveal. The sign gets plonked on top of the fixed archway, Soul Society West Branch. So it's confirmed this is in the Bleach universe. These guys are the Western version of Soul Society, of Seirete, of Shinigami, which just opens a boatload of questions, you know. It opens a lot of questions about, you know, how this place, how the dragons similar to Hollows. Are there even Hollows in this world? Are there Shinigami in this world? Is this literally just their version of Soul Society? Unfortunately, we don't get any answers really to that, but it ends with Noel chasing Virgo because she's angry with him. The Shonen Jump little tidbit at the side says, "We're not done with this world yet." That gave me a lot of hope when I saw it, and obviously we haven't heard anything since, and it's now 2020, but Bleach Face Again is around the corner. One thing I did forget to mention in my Bleach Face Again video was Burn the Witch, and I think I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but there's definitely talk of a Burn the Witch OVA happening. I don't know if it was confirmed. It might be. But I think it's basically happening. But essentially, we'll probably get this animated, and maybe they'll do a little bit more. I don't know, because I don't think this will take up that much time to animate, really. Well, no, it could easily be a full episode, I suppose. But anyway, I think that Burn the Witch, some kind of animation is definitely coming, and there's a good chance of that being announced at the Face Again. And then obviously Burn the Witch is on the final panel, and everyone, again, this is something everyone knows, but the letters that are shaded make the word Bleach. It's quite smart how he's done the A through the W, of which that is quite clever. But anyway, this video has gone on for very long, so let me just summarise my thoughts on Burn the Witch. I like it. It's probably not what I was expecting to get from Kubo the first time he came back as a manga artist, and that's probably what he wants. You know, he probably doesn't want to do, or didn't want to do, the exact same thing again. So I can kind of respect that. The story, I think, it's okay. You know, it's very, very early Bleach. Like I said, it's exactly the kind of chapter you'd expect to get in the first or second volume of Bleach, and therefore, comparatively to what we've had, it's like not that interesting. You know, just being completely honest, it's not that interesting. The most interesting part of the chapter is finding out about the new world, about the new rules, about the new creatures and the characters. That's where the interest really lies. The actual plot itself is pretty standard fare. They have to go and save a friend who's being attacked by a dragon. The dragon happens to be someone the guy knows. It's very Orihime Sora sort of stuff. But yeah, it's done pretty well. The most interesting thing about Burn the Witch, like I said, is how it's an introduction to a brand new part of Bleach. Will we see it again? I think almost certainly. I will give the chapter, on the whole, a 3 out of 5. I like it. It doesn't blow me away necessarily. The coolest part about it is the novelty of being back in the world. But I'm interested to see more for sure. Especially Billy Banks. That guy looks cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my half an hour long review. Jesus. Let me know what you think of Burn the Witch in the comments below. Are you expecting to see it again in the future? Do you think that's the Bleach face again announcement? Let me know in the comments what you thought of the chapter. What do you think of the new characters? What do you think of Soul Society Western Branch? Do you think the two were ever likely to meet? That would be interesting. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, guys, what you think, what you thought of this review. If you did like the review, give the video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And, just stay in the loop for future videos, which should be coming out, hopefully, at a regular rate, but we will see. All right, thanks a lot, guys. See ya.